Okay, good morning, everybody. And thank you for joining us at this session about building your professional online profile, which is part of the Queen's Careers Spring Festival. My name is Patricia Durkin. I'm one of the careers consultants here, and I've got two very special guests here joining me this morning. We've got Carla and Connor from Slice. I'm going to ask them in just a quick minute to introduce themselves and to introduce Slice to you. But before I do, just a very quick bit of housekeeping. This session will be recorded. The recording will be made available through a link on the careers website at some stage, maybe in the next week or so. We encourage you to use the chat and the Q&A function. There will be a Q&A slot at the end of the session this morning. So if you do have questions, could I ask that you please put them into the Q&A part of it rather than the chat, just so that we can separate those out and find them easily. I will be trying to monitor the chat as we go through things, but I may miss something. So if you've got questions, please put them in there. And also, just at the end of it, I will put up an evaluation form for you to give us some feedback on it. So now that we've got that out of the way, I would like to welcome Carla Mccallen, who is a Senior Manager of Global Talent Acquisition, and Connor McLernon, who is a Talent Acquisition Partner, both at Slice. Could I ask you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and about Slice? So Carla, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for the introduction and thanks for having us here today. Really excited to answer your questions later on. So as Patricia says, I'm Senior Manager of Global Talent Acquisition here at Slice, covering all of our locations, Belfast, New York and Macedonia. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. Connor, I'll let you jump in and you can do the intro into Slice as a company as well.
Of course, yeah. Good morning, folks. My name's Connor. I'm a talent acquisition partner here at Slice, based in Belfast. I guess essentially my role, and similar to Carla's, is to kind of oversee all kind of talent acquisition within Slice, particularly within technical focused roles, so software engineers and mobile engineers, so candidates and applicants from those types of backgrounds. I guess in terms of Slice, we are a technology company. We're a technology marketplace company. Quite interestingly, we operate in the pizza space in the US, so it's quite unique in that regard. But yeah, we're here to kind of empower local pizzeria business owners and in the US nationally to fight against the bigger players in that field. So the likes of your Domino's and your Pizza Hut, Papa John's and Little Caesars are the big four. So we give tools, technologies, data insights, even from a creative and branding perspective, we help them and give them a bit of a leg up against those bigger players. So we're all about keeping local thriving.
Okay, thank you both for that introduction, and thank you again for joining us. I'm sure the students will learn a lot today from your expertise. So the topic of today's discussion is building a professional online profile. And with so much of our lives being lived online at the minute, that it's so important to think about how we present ourselves online. And it's only going to become more important, I think, over the next few years. And just to start with, we've seen how important it is to make the profile professional. We've seen in the news recently of some local politicians who have caused embarrassment for themselves and their parties by putting things online that they maybe shouldn't have. So the point I'm making here is, as students, you may have been up until now using social media to represent yourselves and your own interests, but as you progress into transitioning to work after university, you need to think a little bit about, is this professional in terms of, will employers feel confident in hiring you as being able to maintain the reputation of their company online? So it's a worthwhile exercise to have a look at how you already are presenting yourselves online, making sure that there's nothing there that you wouldn't feel comfortable for a potential employer to see, but also just making sure that it represents you as an aspiring professional in your field. So we're certainly not going to dwell on any of the negative sides of social media. We're really going to focus today on the positive things about building yourself and your reputation as a professional in the space that you want to get into. So today we're going to focus on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with LinkedIn, but just in case, it is a professional networking profile, that platform that is free to use. There are some paid for features, but we're not really going to talk about those today because there's so much that students can get from the platform that is completely free. So we're really going to focus on that side of things. And now a quick disclaimer about LinkedIn, that if you have a look online and you search for advice about how to use LinkedIn effectively, you'll probably see quite a lot about getting headhunted through the platform. Now, in my experience, I have known some students to be headhunted through the platform. That has been fairly rare, and they have typically been students who have have studied computing and have had professional experience, some relevant professional experience. So the point I'm making here is that that can happen for some students in some really high demand areas, but it's just to set expectations. It might not happen for all students. That's not really what we're going to focus on today about getting headhunted. There's lots of other ways you can use LinkedIn to build your professional profile, to set yourself up as an aspiring professional in your field. And we're really going to talk more about that than about necessarily being headhunted through it. So what we've got today, we've got a bit of an outline where we're going to talk through 5 different steps to building your professional online profile on LinkedIn. Before I get into any of that, I just wanted to ask Connor and Carla if there's anything you wanted to talk about in terms of just what we've been saying so far, the importance of having a professional online presence.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very relevant, especially nowadays. We're in a digital age. It's great to have your your digital profile out there that is visible to prospective employers like myself and Carla. But yeah, I guess it plays an important part as we kind of move away from, even now CVs in some regards, where your LinkedIn profile is just as important. So making sure that that's kind of professional, up to date, relevant, I think is a really important part.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're going to talk about today is LinkedIn versus CVs and where the distinction lies and what you can do on both different types of ways of representing yourself. So in terms of LinkedIn, we're going to talk about 5 different steps. And the first one is about researching to see what other people are doing, especially other people in the area that you want to get into. With that in mind, we know that there's a lot of students who may be watching this who are interested in a really wide variety of different areas, studying different subjects, looking to get into different things. So I'd like to encourage the students now, if you could just put into the chat what subjects you are studying, what areas, what sectors you're kind of interested in getting into, just so that we can see who's here and who's watching us today. So yeah, the first step that I'm going to talk about is about researching and seeing what other people are doing. Then using that research to build your online profile. And that's where we're really going to ask Carla and Connor to talk about how they look at LinkedIn profiles and the different sections and how you can use those effectively. The next step after that is about making connections and then following companies and then keeping active on the platform. So those are the steps that we want to talk about today. And I'm going to start with that idea of researching and looking at what other people are doing. And you may be, because there are so many different diverse areas you might be interested in, we can't give you any specific companies to follow or people to have a look at. So you really need to do your own research about that. But what I want to do is I want to share with you a tool on LinkedIn that you might not be familiar with yet, to show you how you can start that research into the area you might be interested in. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I hope you can all see that okay. And on here, what you can do, that's my profile on LinkedIn. What you can do is you can search for Queen's University Belfast. So it's just putting it into the search bar up there, Queen's University Belfast. I already had it loaded because I go here quite often. And then when you go in here, you'll see there's quite a few things that you can find. And one of them is this thing called the alumni tool. Now, what this means is that it's showing you the people who have profiles on LinkedIn who have mentioned having studied at Queen's. Some of them may actually be current students rather than alumni, so just bear that in mind. And what you're going to see here is there are over 100,000 people who've mentioned having studied at Queen's. They've mentioned that in their profile. Now you can search this, you can search it by keyword, you can search it by year. You've also got filter tools that you can go and have a look at. So you could maybe say, if you're particularly interested in working in Canada, you could go and see some of the graduates who live over there. You could see if there are particular companies you want to have a look at, you could look at those. On the next page here, you've got filters by sector. Now, these lists are not comprehensive, so you'll see there's only, maybe 20 different sectors, so it's really quite high level here. But like I say, you can use the keyword if you don't see the sector you're interested in, and that also applies to if you don't see the subject of study that you're particularly interested in, or that you currently study. So I see here we've got a few students. Thank you for putting into the chat. You're studying management, aerospace engineering, software development. I'm just going to choose, I believe we'll have so many management students. I'm not going to put that one in, I apologize, but I'm going to put aerospace engineering in, if I can spell today. Oh my goodness, see typing. And what we should get here is a list of people who have mentioned aerospace engineering in their profiles. Actually, it's quite good then to go here, click on the actual subject of study, just in case, they're taking those keywords from elsewhere. And then you can look here and see where they're living, where they're working. And if, for example, you particularly want to go and work at Spirit Aerosystems, and you'll see there are quite a lot of graduates working there, you can scroll down, have a look at some of these students and some of these graduates, and then you can, for example, let's pick someone who graduated maybe a little bit longer ago, and have a look at their profiles and what they have written, how they've gotten to where they are. And this gives you a good idea of also companies to follow, interests, and the skills they've mentioned. So it's quite useful for your own career management to look at where previous graduates have gone, how they've gotten to where they are, but also quite useful for you to see what kind of things might be useful to put into your profile. So I've actually picked out a couple of graduates I want to highlight to you. And the reason I've picked these is they represent two quite different sectors. And this is why I think it's important to look at research into what people in different sectors actually put in their profiles. So the first one we've got is Peter. I have got their permission to show their profiles here. First one is Peter Moore, who is a trainee journalist. You may have actually seen him on the television. Peter, because of the work that he's in and the sector that he's in, Peter is very active on social media. He's active on LinkedIn, but he's also active across a few different things. He's very active on Twitter. On his profile, you will see there's quite a lot of detail. If you click on the activity, you'll see he's been quite active in recent months. There we go. He's been quite active in the last month. He's clicked on a few things, liked things, but also further down, he has written articles. If we go back to his profile and scroll further down, you will see he's put links to blogs that he's written and articles that he's written. So he is using LinkedIn very much as a platform to put himself forward as a journalist. So just to compare that to James here, who works in finance, James's profile is much briefer. He has fewer connections than Peter because it's a different industry. His activity is he's been active, but not quite so much in the last few years. That's just not as essential in his area of work. His profile is a bit more sparse, but there's still information there and still relevant skills, relevant accomplishments, and relevant interests. So he still uses it, but he doesn't use it to the extent that Peter does because it's a different industry and they'll be interested in different things. So I just wanted to showcase those to you as a way to explain why it's good to research and look at what other people are doing to know the kind of sector you're going into and what they do in those areas. So hopefully that has stopped sharing now. We're back to talking, because that was the first step, which is about researching, and we've given you a tool to now go and research. The next step is about using that research to build your profile. And this is where I'm going to hand over to Connor and Carla to kind of talk through a LinkedIn profile and what they would look for and how they think you could use these sections very effectively. So over to you guys.
Perfect. I'll just share my screen as well, then I'll maybe walk everybody through my own, I guess, LinkedIn profile, which should give me a little bit more functionality and just to kind of talk through some of the sections there. So hopefully you can see that screen now.
Yes, we can see that, Connor. Perfect.
Okay, great. Well, I guess once you first jump onto your own personal LinkedIn profile, the first thing that you're going to see is option for a profile picture. I've opted for something that looks a bit smug there, but yeah, like feel free to kind of show your personality off here. I mean, I think there's maybe a misconception that sometimes it needs to be very formal attire. It's not the case, and certainly in the kind of industry that I would be recruiting in, technical software engineers, there tends to be less of that. It's a very much a jeans and t-shirt culture sometimes, unless you're in client meetings. So feel free to share your personality there. Doesn't have to be super formal, but I guess something maybe memorable and that you think represents you. The other part of that is obviously your heading or your profile picture at the top. Again, doesn't have to be anything super formal, but I've seen engineers come up with their kind of their own graphics or something maybe that highlights their own website. So anything that you think shows off a bit of your own flair and personality is good to include in there. I actually think
can I jump in really quickly just
on
kind of the images and things like that? So quite recently LinkedIn brought in a dark mode, so just make sure you're testing out your pictures or your images on both dark and light mode, because sometimes it can kind of just disappear on the dark mode. So just make sure that you're keeping that in mind.
Good point. I think there's a very memorable profile to me of a software engineer in Belfast, and their profile picture is actually it's like RoboCop or a robot riding a unicorn, and it's maybe not as extreme as I would advise people to go, but I guess the point is that is very memorable to me, and I've always remembered that profile. So feel free to share a bit of your personality as well. Going down, obviously, make sure that your title or your prospective title is there. You'll see that LinkedIn actually will auto put in some hashtags. So quite often when I post, it'll be hashtag software jobs or software engineering jobs. LinkedIn will pick up on that. So the more that you continue to post and put yourself out there and comment, that will become more relevant. So at a first glance, I can see that this person is interested in this area because they talk a lot about it, which is great. We scroll further down, some of this may not be relevant, but yeah, as Patricia mentioned, activity is really important. So, much like your personal social media, there is option to like and share and comment. And yeah, I would absolutely encourage people to do that. Areas that they find interesting, articles that they find interesting, share links to your own work, your own website, your own side projects that you're doing, your own blogs, articles. It's all really great content for your LinkedIn profile. And for somebody like me who's looking at your profile, it enables me to build a really good picture of you as a candidate or as an applicant very quickly, I would say.
You mentioned there about articles and things like that. We'll maybe touch upon this a little bit later, but if you're in an area, maybe it's research based or creative or something like that, and you want to actually publish some of your own content, it's really important to use the publishing tool within LinkedIn, because the algorithm will then boost you up when it comes to people searching for something that you're maybe writing about. So just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The about section is really important, and it's one of the things that I look at, I guess, first when I'm viewing somebody's profile. It's easy to kind of miss this part or have something very brief in there. You can see I've just included some of the roles that we're currently hiring for. But when you're looking for a job, make sure to put a bit of effort into, I guess, this space for two reasons. Firstly, it's easy to see. It's right at the top of your profile, comes up as your about or your summary section. But secondly, this section will also pick up keywords on your profile. So again, from my perspective, when I'm searching for candidates, the keywords flag up from this area as well. So, make sure that you're making it very clear what you actually do, or maybe what you're looking for, the areas that you feel are your strongest. Again, I'm going to use software engineers as an example. So quite often we maybe get a lot of, you're taught a lot at uni and you touch a lot of different areas, but maybe you feel stronger in one area over the other. Make that very clear in your summary section, even, kind of list them as top proficiencies, intermediate proficiencies, and maybe beginner or starter level. Because again, at a quick glance, when those keywords are picked up, I'm able to see exactly, where your strengths lie, and accordingly take action from there. Patricia, you touched on this already. Your experience bar is really important. Again, keywords are really important here. Make sure you include in all of the areas that you think are your strengths. And it gives a prospective recruiter or somebody who's looking at your profile a really good overview of the roles that you've had. Make sure your dates are accurate as well. Quite often we see roles that, I finished that role in October 2020, but sometimes they maybe, I've forgotten to update that to my current role and it still says present. So it looks like I'm concurrently working 2 roles, which obviously is not the case. So those things are sometimes overlooked, and it's hard to kind of judge where you are. Carla, sorry.
Yeah, just a big thing. Like, you'd be surprised how many times we will get CVs in and it doesn't actually match the LinkedIn profile. We do check as recruiters. So just make sure that your CV is completely on the same lines as your LinkedIn profile, because it's really easy to spot if it's not. And sometimes it's just like not even like a conscious thing. It's just, it's just been forgotten about, or you just remembered a date wrong or something like that. But even when it is an innocent mistake, sometimes it can feel a little bit like, what's going on? So yeah, just really important to keep that right.
Yeah, and I would say as well, I mean, even if you have a short stint in a role for whatever reason, don't maybe try and hide that from your LinkedIn profile. And then again, as Carla said, it doesn't match your CV or your experience. We're all humans. We all maybe make mistakes or moved into the wrong role for whatever reason, or something hasn't worked out. That's totally fine. But I would say, be honest on your LinkedIn profile and have that as a true representation of kind of your experience. Because in fact, if you've stayed at a role for 3 months, that might have been a really valuable learning curve for you, and maybe highlighted something that you do or don't want to do, or you've picked up some skills from that, even though it's a short tenure. So yeah, make sure that section is as up to date as possible.
Just to your point on that, Connor, like, yeah, that I think that's so true. Like, some people feel really nervous, and more often than not, like, because Connor and I, just as an example, like, we've been in the industry for a long time and we kind of know where people have been in their career. So we've actually had CVs come through and we're like, but I placed that person in this company and they haven't put it on their CV. Like, it's just such a small world, and somebody could very easily kind of pick up on that. Just remember, like, if you do, and this is maybe kind of later in your career, if you do stay somewhere and it doesn't work out and you move on, please don't think that every employer is going to look at that as a red flag, because actually being able to identify that a company isn't right for you or the role isn't right for you is a really brave thing to walk away, and that's an attribute that's actually really attractive to a lot of employers. So just be confident in your decisions, even if you think it's going to look bad.
Absolutely. I guess next up, another important section is the skills and endorsements. So you can see mine is filled with kind of recruiting, technical recruiting, sales, those types of skill sets. Again, I'm going to use software engineering as an example, but you may have Python or Java or Golang or React or JavaScript included on here. But I would encourage to kind of, reach out to your friends, your peers, your colleagues, and ask them if they can endorse you for your top skills. Again, it starts to build a really good picture of where your strengths lie. Again, my keyword searches will pick up all of those technologies that I'm searching for. But if I can see that there's one that is heavily endorsed over, the other 3 or 4 that's mentioned on your profile, then that gives me a really good indicator that you're probably somebody that I would love to talk to about a prospective role, because it matches a skill that I'm looking for. I'm not sure what the limit you can have there on your skills. I think it's maybe 20 or 30.
I think there are 50. I think it's 50 skills.
Oh, is it 50? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I'm obviously not that talented. I'm good 50 on there.
the big piece of advice I'll have on this, and it's something that we see in not just the software side, in like lots of different disciplines. If particularly at the graduate level, if someone has taken a module in a particular area, they tend to put it on their skills. But unless you can really, my test is always, could you sit down and do a test on that subject? If you went into an interview with an employer and they said, oh, I see this on your on your LinkedIn and they sat you like a pop test, like right in front of you, could you take it? And that's when you would know to put it on as a skill. If you're comfortable enough to take a test in it, then I wouldn't put it down. Because if it does come up in an interview and they say, oh, I see you have Python down, and you've maybe written one line of Python code, it's going to make for a little bit of an awkward moment in your interview.
Yeah, absolutely. So set yourself up with your strengths and put your best foot forward. Absolutely. So we skip through the rest of that. Another thing that's super important, and this is where your kind of peers, your colleagues, even your teachers may be able to help out if you're comfortable asking, is recommendations. Like anything, even in, you go to the shop, you go to buy something. If somebody has recommended something to you, the chances of you having a positive mindset around that is greatly enhanced. So if I'm seeing a profile where there's lots of great recommendations, kind words, that somebody has worked with this person before, it's such a good indicator of somebody that I would love to speak to. So there's many. They have to be colleagues. They can be friends. You can have some personal ones on there. You can have more professional ones. But yeah, reach out to people that you've worked with, maybe in your group projects. You could, there's potentially room to have 3 new recommendations on your profile if you're doing it for each other. But make use of those recommendations, because again, from my perspective, I do use them. I do look at them, and they really highlight your profile as a positive one when they're there. I guess accomplishments. Again, I'm not very accomplished, but please feel free to put, articles, blogs, links to your own website, anything you've built from a software engineer perspective, or anything you've written from journalism, whatever it may be. Put them in here, include them. All relevant content for sure. And then interests is pretty self-explanatory when you want to kind of follow some interesting things within your field. And actually, I think if I click on, so if you click into there, it breaks it down into influencers, companies, groups. So you can see that I've actually part of a few groups here that are software engineering related. And that was literally just a case of going to the search bar at the top of the screen and searching for groups. You'll be able to filter that. So I would encourage you to look about in Belfast, or if you're looking to work further afield, be part of those groups, because you'll see relevant content then populating your LinkedIn feed. That then gives you the opportunity to like, to share, to comment, and really start to kind of build your profile that way as well. But that is pretty much it. So I think
I've just had a really quick thought. I'm trying to get my brain out of software so much, but I think what actually looks really well, particularly if you're, just recently graduated and going into the world of work, kind of in this section, like in your about section, don't be afraid to talk about results, right? So say, for example, you're really proud of a mark you got in a particular module, and it's really relevant to that industry, and maybe the types of companies that you're looking for are really big on academics and that side of a thing, like, where you're comfortable doing. So obviously, it's good to put some like results down there, or say you've done a placement, or maybe you've done even a week's internship somewhere or something like that. Even if it's just a couple of days shadowing someone, even just saying spent 3 days shadowing someone, but it actually cemented in me that this is the path I want to go down. It will make employers go, they are actually passionate and serious about this area. So yeah, I guess just any little things like that show results, or the result of something making you more keen on a particular area, or you got like a super high score in a particular module, like anything you think like is relevant to the people you're trying to attract to your profile. Those little snippets of information are really attractive as well, and will help you stand out from the crowd.
Okay, absolutely. So I'll stop sharing my screen and maybe hand back to you, Patricia, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for talking through that, because I think it's really helpful for students to see it from your point of view as what you look for. And I think what you were just saying at the end there about About Me section. It's very like the bit at the top of your CV where you highlight all of those unique selling points that you might have for the particular type of work you want to get into. So I just echo what Carla and Connor say there about how important that is to get that right and to really represent yourself as well as possible. It's very easy to kind of flick through your LinkedIn profile and just put in your dates and what you studied and just get on with it. But taking the time really, it really pays off if you can take some time to do it properly.
I think Northern Irish people, we're not always great at kind of bigging ourselves up, you know. And I know there's going to be kind of international students as well, and at that graduate level again, you know, it can be difficult. It's like, I don't have the experience, or haven't done this, or I haven't done that, when actually, you know, there's probably loads of stuff that's really relevant and shows not just your capability for a job, but your attributes as a person. You know, and that's really important as well.
Yeah, and actually to that point, there was a question that I had, because I've looked at student profiles on LinkedIn in the past, and sometimes in the About section, it doesn't look like it matches with the rest of what they've written. So it looks like they've gone and researched and actually copied from somebody else's profile because they don't feel they have enough to sell themselves. And so they've copied from someone who is a bit more senior and made it sound very buzzwordy and very professional. Now, I typically would say, best not to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Ignore, please don't go down the buzzword route. Like,
we'll see right through it.
we spell it a mile off, and that's kind of what I was saying about, even, you know, whenever you're putting your skills down and things like that, unless you're happy to sit down and do a test in it, don't put it down.
It's about showcasing what you have rather than trying to sound like you're someone else.
Exactly, and you know, again, to my point on, you know, showcase your results. If you're saying something about yourself, back it up as much as you can, without obviously going into like War and Peace. You don't need to do that, but just stay away from buzzwords. Like, it's actually really off-putting, more than it is attractive. So
I actually think there's something to be said as well for, yes, highlighting your strengths and, you know, everything that you're good at, but maybe also highlighting the areas that you think, you know, are really interesting to you, but maybe you haven't had the opportunity to get into.
Your interests as well as your strengths,
Yeah, absolutely. And being very open and transparent and say, look, okay, I haven't done X, Y, and Z. However, I've read a couple of books, you know, I followed this blog, and it's an area that I would very much like to get into in the future. Again, you're coming across as somebody who has a genuine interest in that area, and that is attractive to employers.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we've covered the first two steps then. I think we've talked about research and we've talked about building your profile. The next step really is about making connections. And there's lots of ways that you can do that. And we've talked a little bit about the alumni tool. Connor also mentioned the groups tool on LinkedIn. If you're not familiar with that, it's up under the work menu, and just search for the area of work you're interested in. You will see thousands of groups on LinkedIn, some more active than others. But I think all of them you can request to join. Not all of them are free for everybody to join. The administrators will say whether or not they'll let you join, but it's a great way for you to learn about what people in your industry of interest, learn about what they're talking about, learn about what the trends are, what are the topics of conversation, but also those are groups of people you might want to connect with. So yes, you might want to connect with alumni. What my finding is they're typically very happy to connect with current students and tell them about their career paths, and connecting with professionals through groups. But don't forget as well, maybe other groups you're a member of. So could be professional associations, students in different subjects, or student members of professional associations. So use those to find other people you might want to connect with through LinkedIn. There might be other groups, meetups or whatever that you might be a participant of. So use those. When you're doing that on LinkedIn, there is the connection request. And I think some people can turn it off that you can't request to connect with them, but for most people, you can request to connect with them. There is an automatic message that comes up. I would like to be added to your professional network. I think it's really worth taking some time to tailor that. So for obviously your friends, your family, people who know you, don't worry about it. But for other people, it's really worth putting in a quick message like, Carla, Connor, I saw your talk today and I'd really like to connect with you. So just let them know who you are and tell them a little bit about yourself. Do you guys have anything you want to put in, say about that, making connections and reaching out to people?
Yeah, I think definitely more so today than before. Putting that little message in just does make all the difference. LinkedIn has become very saturated, and everyone's on LinkedIn now. Everyone uses it as a massive tool for, building out their network, looking for job opportunities, hoping to be headhunted. So, whenever people are kind of being trigger happy and kind of just trying to connect with everyone, people just don't have the time anymore to give to absolutely everybody. So it will kind of make you stand out, and you're more likely to have that person connect with you if you look like you've made a bit of an effort to kind of join their network.
I believe LinkedIn actually has a feature that will block you or suspend you for a short period if you're kind of just mass connecting with people. It automatically detects you're a robot or a bot that's just trying to kind of grow a network automatically. So yeah, definitely, just to echo what Carla said, take that time to kind of personalize your approach. You only have, I think, 300 characters maybe, which isn't a lot when you are sending a personalized message. It's maybe a sentence or two sentences at a push. So something very brief, a quick hi, like you said, I seen you at the talk, or I love the company you work at, I'd love to find out more. Something very brief, but that personal touch is great, and especially for people in your own area.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so the next step we want to talk about is following companies. And this is, again, where I'm going to hand back over to Connor to talk through the different presence that companies have on LinkedIn. And if you can talk through Slice, what students will be able to find when they look for Slice online, and why it's useful to follow companies.
Yeah, sure. Let me be helpful, I guess, just to share my screen again. So that should just be opening.
Yeah, that's working.
Perfect. So I guess, just to find the Slice page, it's literally just clicking on the search bar, where the first hit that comes up there, and click on that, and it will bring you to our own page. You highlighted some of the areas earlier, Patricia, that are on here, but it's really important that we kind of have a presence there on LinkedIn, and that we are able to kind of share who we are and what we do in a brief summary and a brief snapshot. So I would certainly encourage, just particularly any software engineering or mathematics or computer science students to follow us on LinkedIn, because what that will enable us to do then is actually share content with you. You'll see those things populating on your newsfeed, whether it be interesting articles about Slice, job opportunities, new joiners. Again, that maybe circles back into people that you might want to connect with if you're interested in working with Slice. But yeah, it's really important for us to have that presence out there. There's a lot of posts. Sorry, Carla, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, if you click into the post section and say, for example, you are interested in working for a particular company, and there's someone that you want to reach out to in there because you've heard really good things about and you want to work with them, or something to that effect. If you go in, have a look at their posts, see what they're talking about, what's going on, it's a really nice icebreaker, whenever you actually reach out to that person, because it's like, oh, I seen, you're partnering with GGV. Not that any of you that will make sense to any of you, but they're like one of our big investors and they're really well known. Well, there we go, Peter Chain. You could say, oh, I looked into Peter Chain, 19 years at Google. He's joined Slice. That's a really big name person that's come to join the team. Would love to have a chat with someone about joining. Do you know what I mean? It kind of looks like you've done a little bit of research in the company. You know what's going on. You have a reason to want to talk to someone or look at it, and it can just, as I say, kind of melt the ice a little bit when you're reaching out and trying to think in your head of a way to engage with someone. That's a nice way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got a full list of kind of employees there as well who are active on LinkedIn, so you can click on that. There's people in there that maybe, if you're interested in data engineering, Richard, Maria there, there's actually opportunity to connect with those people as well. So yeah, I guess, Patricia, any thoughts, any questions from your side?
So no, I was just wanted to make students aware that they can follow companies, and I think you've demonstrated there why it's so useful that they do that and follow companies in the industry that they're interested in. The point that I always make to students is if they're going for an interview, they're going to have to demonstrate that they have an understanding of the company, and having followed their posts and knowing about their news articles. And like you said, Carla, saying, oh, I saw that Peter Chain just recently joined your company and that's really exciting and that makes me, interested. These are the kind of things that are useful for you to be able to bring up at an interview, again, to demonstrate that you have done some research, that you know who the company is. So that's one of the reasons I think it's really useful to know about companies and to follow them, as well as just to be told about jobs, which I know is always a useful thing for students to find is, we'll be notified of that. So thank you for that. So yeah, that was the kind of fourth step in this plan of researching and building your profile and making connections, following companies. The last one is really just about being active and keeping active. So as you saw there on Connor's profile and on Peter's profile that I showed you earlier, there's lots of ways that you can be active on LinkedIn. You can like people's posts, you can comment on them, you can actually write your own posts, you can write your own articles, you can share different kinds of media, you can share photographs. And I think it's a really good way for people that you have connected with, just to keep them up to date with what you're doing and what's going on with you. I think it's especially useful for students to think about, and what I see a lot of students using it for is, I've just completed this certification in something, or look, I've just graduated, which is always a nice thing to show and have a nice photograph. Just a quick word of warning, I believe it's not good to show, if you're using a photograph, show the photograph of your degree certificate itself. I believe some people have forged them off of the basis of knowing what they look like, so be careful about that. Just a nice picture of you in front of the lanyard will work really well. But that really gives people an idea, keeps them up to date with what you're doing, and use all of the different tools within it. Use hashtags, use apps, just to keep people informed and let people know what you're doing. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that?
I think totally agree. I mean, stay active on there. You don't have to be posting. I know it's difficult maybe to come up with content unless you're maybe in that field, but commenting, sharing, liking, even you've maybe been to a meetup, or you've been to some kind of talk, you've taken a photograph there, posting that just to say, hey, I was in attendance, I really enjoyed it. It was great. I think also that the kind of line between strictly professional and personal has almost been blurred a little bit on LinkedIn more recently.
Yeah.
And I personally don't mind it. We see a lot of stuff, or I see a lot of stuff, maybe around where people are getting involved in charitable causes. They've raised some money for a certain, and it's not strictly related to maybe your profession or your area of academia, but it's still building your profile. It's still sharing, it's building a character profile, I guess, more so than a professional one. So yeah, absolutely, feel free to kind of share those types of things. It can't hurt.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, again, it's showcasing those attributes rather than those personal attributes, rather than kind of what you can deliver on a day in work. It's about who you are as a person is really super important as well. So yeah.
Okay, well, that's our 5 steps then. So hopefully you'll all be now building your professional online profiles, and it'll connecting with people. We're going to hand over now to the Q&A, or we're going to switch over to that side of things. We have a question in, and so I'm just going to put this to either Connor or Carla, whoever wants to answer it. This is actually really useful for your sector. This is an advice for career changers moving into the tech sector. This is someone, I believe from the chat, she comes from an education background, and says it can feel her experience isn't relevant, not related to the job she's interested in. What can she do?
As in the career.
Yeah, so for a career changer, so basically how does she present herself on her LinkedIn profile, maybe on her CV, to demonstrate that, you know, this is the area she wants to get into, rather than, because I imagine a lot of it will be about where she's been in the past. So how does she pitch herself to a new industry?
Oh, okay. So if it's a case of my CV is going to be full of stuff from my previous kind of education background, that's okay, because again, there's probably loads of transferable skills within that education background that we actually look for in software. So that will never go to waste. And actually, I've placed quite a few people in my time in recruitment who've been teachers into software very successfully. I guess just making it really clear, what is it about this industry that interests you? Like, what is it that captures your interest, and what kind of areas are you excited to get into? Because there's so many areas, and I think that's the one thing about software is you don't have to be the most techie person in the world and love coding day in, day out. Like, there's lots of different avenues. So I think maybe just having a chat with the likes of myself and Connor, like, if you want to talk after this, like, please let us know, and we can help you out and go into a little bit more detail on that and how to do that. But I think try and find one or two areas that you're really, really interested in getting into, and then tailoring it for that. Because if you wanted to be a software engineer specifically, you'd go down one road. If you wanted to go into product management, if you wanted to go into web, or you wanted to go into business analysis, like, there's so many different areas. So it's difficult to kind of give a one size fits all answer to that question. But more than happy to give guidance after this if you wish.
Yeah, one of the tips I always give to people, with especially with a CV, because you're limited in space there to the 2 pages, if you have a lot of previous experiences, it's condense that down. So highlight the transferable skills rather than giving all of the details of all of the different achievements and all of the things you did. Is to highlight those transferable skills, but then focus more on what you've been doing recently. So really make your CV or your LinkedIn profile now more about what the industry you want to get into. So showcasing those skills that you have, highlighting those interests, so that the balance is now more about you in tech with a background in education, rather than you as an educator moving into tech, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add to that as well. There's heaps and tons of resources out there that are free, a lot of open source stuff online. So particularly related to software engineering or technology, there are maybe some areas where you can invest a little bit further if you kind of want to invest in yourself and maybe pay for some paid courses. But quite often on profiles similar to this, I would see 25 hours invested in a so-and-so course for this via Udemy or Code Academy or something similar. So focus on those areas. Yeah, the experiences that you've had before might not strictly be relevant. There are learnings there. But yeah, continue to kind of push forward and explore those other avenues. You don't need to be working in a company to do those. It's probably something you're doing at your weekend or your own time, and maybe doing a few hours a week just to kind of build that profile. But make sure that those types of things are relevant on your CV as well and visible at the top.
Yeah, and just to highlight to students as well, that if you do take any of those additional courses that you might be doing while you're a student, you might do over the summer, you can get Degree Plus accreditation for doing a certain number of hours of them. So there is information about that if you look on Degree Plus. So because we encourage people to do that as a way of developing your skills a little further. There aren't any more questions have come in, but I have a couple I'd like to ask just while we're waiting to see if others have come in. Others do come in. So sure. For some jobs, and I think you mentioned this earlier, Carla, that you can apply for them directly through LinkedIn rather than using a CV. So I just wondered if you guys have any particular tips for students if they're doing that. Do Slice as a company offer that as an option? If you can talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, we can. Like 9 times out of 10, applying through LinkedIn, you still need to attach a CV. Like you still have to go through with a CV. But job boards in general have seen a massive decline. Probably around 49% was the last kind of data point that I was given in terms of people going to kind of the more local job boards and whatnot. And people are looking more for jobs on LinkedIn because it's kind of a one-stop shop, isn't it? you can go on, you can research, you can look for jobs, you can look at the company straight away, you can look at the people within those companies. It just gives you a much more kind of rounded view of the job you might potentially be, you know, applying for. So yes, we have all of our roles up on LinkedIn. It actually just comes through our applicant tracking system exactly the same way as it would if you were applying through our website. So it's of no, I mean, I wouldn't say there's any greater benefit of applying via LinkedIn or any greater benefit applying through somebody's website. It all kind of ends up in the same place. But I think LinkedIn is a good place because if you are looking at jobs specifically, as I say, you can very easily then just click into the company, look at the people, and you're in one space rather than being on one of the local job boards and just kind of trigger happy, kind of just applying for everything that you see.
I would say further, like there is an option on LinkedIn to kind of export your profile as a PDF document, and that kind of formats it in a typical CV format. That you can do that, but I would be very cautious because if your LinkedIn profile is not up to scratch and is missing gaps, and then you come out on the other side with a very kind of empty looking CV, and it's very apparent that that's what you have done is exported it from LinkedIn. So if you're going to go down that route and you're not going to pull together a traditional CV, make sure that your LinkedIn profile is on point because it will be reflected when you do try to export it.
Yeah, that comes to a point I often make when talking to students about CVs is the danger of using templates. They're forcing you into a structure that's maybe not going to sell you the best way for that particular job. So, look at templates, see how other people have laid it out is great, but really you need to think about what that reader is going to be looking for and how you can get the information across to best effect. So I think that echoes the point you were making about the, just export LinkedIn as a PDF. It's not always going to work well for you.
No.
Particularly at this graduate level, it's different if, say, for example, you're like a senior manager in software engineering. We don't really care what details on there. All we want to see is that you're a senior software development manager and you've worked for this company and that company's really cool and really like similar to Slice. Then we probably won't even look that closely at the CV, just to be completely honest. But definitely because the volume of applicants that you get at the graduate level are, I mean, night and day. Like it's massive. Like we have to trawl through, I mean, hundreds of CVs whenever we advertise a graduate level role. So yeah, and we see the same template coming in all the time. So the ones that are different, they do really stand out, even though the content on them might not even be different. And we wouldn't discriminate, obviously, of course, between what template is used and whatnot, but it definitely stands out from the crowd, and that's really what you're looking for.
And I think it stands. Sorry, Carla, go on.
Not every, we can't. Although Connor and I, we do pride ourselves on being super stringent in terms of like reviewing CVs and not kind of making knee-jerk reactions based on, really quickly kind of skimming it and whatnot. But we can't promise that every recruiter is going to work like that. So you don't know who's doing the screening of those CVs. So it could just be someone at a relatively junior level in a recruiter position, maybe hasn't been trained that well. You don't know who maybe could just be skimming them really, really quickly. And if it just looks the same, it's just like, oh, no. So the more you can stand out and the more individual you can look, then the better.
Yeah, and the more tailored to what it is you're looking for, and to highlighting those things, definitely.
Tailor it to the job spec.
Yeah. So it looks like no more questions have come in, and it looks like we're about to run out of time anyway. So thank you again so much to both Carla and Connor for your time and your expertise this morning. Thank you to the students for participating. I'm sure you found this useful. We've put a little feedback form in for you, so if you could complete that, you'll be entered into a prize draw. So just to give you a bit more of incentive to give us feedback. But yes, I think we'll just call it for today. Thank you again and all the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.